Much, Joseph. I appreciate it. All right. Good morning to all, wherever you're joining us from. And this is a really an occasion I would consider to be a milestone on behalf of SDIG. We have had interns for 4 years now, but we've never had the occasion where we had them to present. And today, I'm so happy that we're gonna do that, and then hopefully everyone is happy as I am. And I have to let you know that we made some really big mistake. The mistake stemmed from the fact that our tech team didn't function as well as they should, so we did as best as we could. As a result, a number of people externally who could have been in here today may not be able to join us. But nevertheless, it's still going to be a monumental thing for us to just get to share what you have done. And hopefully, next time around, we do better. Remember Maya Angelou, who said, you do what you know how to do. I'm paraphrasing here. And when you know better, you do better. So on that grounding, I hope that we are doing the best we can do now with some of the people we have working tirelessly, not only to improve what we do, but also expand it, because since this is a global organization, we have to expand it to reach every corner of the earth as soon as possible. So I thank each and every one of you for coming. All right. So I think in the interest of time, I simply want to say SDIG, since its inception, believes in equity and social justice for all, regardless of where you are, where you may come from, who your parents or grandparents may be, or who you are. And the purpose is to provide a forum for exploring various issues of our time. We believe in the power of holistic sharing of multiple ideas, multiple stories from different perspectives, thus advancing to new and higher contour of learning. SDIG platform encourages participants to share their authentic stories while exchanging ideas, experiences, and perspectives openly. In other words, our sessions are usually intended to ignite meaningful discussion. It's not scripted. Therefore, you are encouraged to be yourself and freely share your work, experience, and how pertinent those are in our contemporary binary societies, and by extension, to our global communities. So, without taking much time, I would ask our uh, um, interns, SDIG interns, to step up and do what they have been working on for us to know what they have been doing. And in case you don't know, we've done this with the University of Chicago this is the 4th year. And today, we are now having another institution, which is the Dressel University in Philadelphia, that are joining us today. So please, join us and welcome them. Okay, guys, it's your time now to take over, okay?
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you guys doing today?
Fine, thank you.
We're
Good
doing
afternoon.
well, thank you.
Today's session isn't just about hearing facts and statistics. It's about feeling, reflecting, and imagining a world shaped by issues of race, gender, sexual orientation, and culture. I don't want this to be a one-way presentation. I want it to be a dialogue where every voice is heard and we envision together what an equable world might look like. To kick things off, I want you to close your eyes for a moment and imagine a world where everyone is treated equally. How would that change who you see leading a business, excelling in schools, or being represented in the media? We are not there yet, but today we'll discuss how far we come and what can we do to bring that world closer. I just want to ask you guys one question. What's one example of inequality or bias you have witnessed in your community or workplace, and how did you make it feel?
Wow.
Anyone can answer.
Folks, they're
So
waiting, they're
yeah,
waiting.
maybe the place where I was doing a part-time, so my supervisor, I don't want to use the word racist, but yeah, there was some discrimination for color of people. So the way he treated was bad. So that was one of the situations which I faced. But yeah, I just overcame came it through, with the confidence of other employees working there. So they boost my confidence, and yeah, that's one of my situations.
Yeah, that's true, Nitin. In many cases, inequality isn't always blatant, but it can show up in a small everyday interactions or being overlooked in meetings or underfunded schools in a marginalized communities or cultural stereotypes which affects people or opportunities. The first step in addressing inequality is to recognize it and to speak up, creating a spaces for dialogue and then action. There is a small poll you guys can scan this poll and poll up yourself. Let's travel back to 1955 when Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama. That single moment of defiance sparked a movement that changed the history. Now moving to 2020, where George Floyd's death ignited global protests. Both events separated by 65 years are connected by one common thread, systemic racism. Despite progress, racism has just took on new forms. Now I want you to imagine being in Rosa Parks' shoes. How do you think it felt a challenge to the system built on segregation and inequality? And imagine yourself at one of the protests in 2020. What emotions do you think were running through the crowd as they demanded justice? What parallels do you see between the civil rights movements and 1950s today? What do you think are the biggest challenges in fighting racism today compared to the past? And the answer is while the battles against the segregation, slavery, and disfranchisement are overt, today's racism often hides behind policies and practices that seem neutral, but unfortunately they harm people of color. Whether it's policy brutality or mass insertion or educational disparities, systemic racism is deeply rooted in our institutions. Let's moving on to next slide. We can see how racism is being disparities in the education. Imagine two students, one from a wealthy neighborhood attending a well-funded school with modern facilities, and the other from a predominantly black neighborhood attending an underfunded school with outdated resources. Both have the same dreams, but one has few opportunities to achieve them. This isn't just a gap in resources, it's a gap in opportunity, potential, and future success. Here's a real life example where you can see in the pictures. There's a modern school segregation by income and race where you can check out the graphs as well. A 2019 study revealed that schools in the United States are more segregated by race and income today than they were 50 years ago. Just imagine how many students are missing out on the chance to succeed simply because of the zip code they live in. If you had the power to change the education policy, how would you address these disparities? Beyond funding, we need to address the systemic issues that perpetuate inequality, such as housing segregation, bias testing system, lack of role models, and also the marginalized students. Redistribution of resources, teacher incentives, and mentorship programs are critical. but so is foresting a culture where all the students, regardless of their background, are encouraged to dream big. Now, I'm just telling a real-time connection where just imagine you are a student in an underfunded school. What opportunities might you missing out? How would that affect your motivation and future prospects? We can move on to racial disparities in employment. The above shown is a graph where callback rates for the resumes with ethnic sounding names. So we can just see, just picture this. You have spent years building your skills, like maybe 10, 15 years building your skills, honing your craft and perfecting your resume. And you will send it to some of the dream company, but you don't even get a call back. Later, then you find out that resumes with has ethnic names which are statistically less likely to receive the interviews. This is unconscious but bias at work. In fact, a Harvard business case study showed that applicants of color who whitened their resumes, removing information that indicated their race, were more likely to get interviews. Imagine feeling like you have to hide your identity just to have a fair shot of getting a job. Just think there are two mock resumes and discuss their biases. How would you feel if your resume was overlooked because of your name? And there is only one solution for it is to implement blind hiring practices, where details like names, addresses, and even educational institutions are removed during the initial screening process. But it goes beyond hiring. Organizations need to create a culture where diversity is celebrated. This can involve diversity training, mentorship programs for employees, and also holding managers accountable for promoting inclusivity. Imagine being judged not by your experience or qualifications, but by your name or background. How would that affect your confidence and your sense of belonging in that workplace? Moving on to next slide, we'll see how it has been affected. It has been a significant effect in the healthcare. Just think that you are in doctor's office explaining some serious health concern, but the doctor dismisses your symptoms. This happens more often than we'd like to think, particularly for people of color. Black women in the US, for instance, are 3 to 4 times more likely to die from pregnancy related complications than white women. The issue isn't just about access to care, it's about implicit bias, which affect the quality of care they receive. Like, as we just know, this Serena Williams story, who is one of the world's greatest athletes, nearly died after giving birth because of a medical team didn't take her symptoms seriously. If someone with her visibility and resources faces the kind of treatment, imagine what happens to those without such privileges. I just want to ask one question, like what changes can healthcare institutions make to address these disparities? And how can communities advocate for better healthcare outcomes for marginalized groups? Anyone can answer.
Okay, I can try to answer, guys. Thank you. I would say the problem is foundational. As you all articulated, various aspects through which we can see disparities, whether it's overt or covert. But it's kind of reality, education, politics, distribution of resources, employment. And then you look at so many other things. So I would say to address it, we will need people who will fit into John Kennedy's book award, people who are courageous. In other words, profile in courage is that award. And unfortunately, we don't have many courageous people. Even leaders, we don't have very courageous leaders. So I would contend to say that that's what we need, and people who are passionate, who are truly committed to issues of equity and social justice, which is what obviously you guys have done some significant work based on what I've seen so far. Thank you.
Thank you so for answering. Like that's true. Like healthcare systems need to prioritize implicit bias training for all the medical staff equally. Additionally, they need to diversify the medical profession so that healthcare providers better reflect the communities they serve. and communities can push for more inclusive health in research or greater representation of minorities in clinical trials and stronger accountability in healthcare outcomes. The agenda will be taken over by Sai Rahul.
Cool. So imagine sitting in a boardroom, eager to share an innovative idea you've been working on for weeks, but as soon as you speak, you are interrupted. Or worse, your idea is ignored until someone else repeats it. This scenario plays out daily for many women in male dominated industries. A 2017 study by McKinsey found that women are more likely to experience this kind of office housework. Tasks and suggestions being overlooked, underevaluated, or credited to others. This disparity in how men and women are heard impacts both career progression and workplace satisfaction. Women are not underrepresented in meetings but often feel marginalized even when they are present. Real world example. So, like the Obama administration used as amplification strategy to combat this, female staffers would deliberately echo each other's ideas in meetings to ensure the credit was given were due. This practice helped make sure women's contributions were acknowledged in a male dominated environment. So, have you guys ever experienced or witnessed something similar in your workplace? Like, how did you or others respond?
Okay, I will
Yeah.
say real quickly. Sorry, I will say real quickly. Just this morning, in a part-time job I have outside of my home, I was trying to help somebody, a social worker who's working with a homeless gentleman, and one of my coworkers is a male. And as I was trying to help this social worker, my coworker interrupted me and questioned my ability to help this social worker because he thought he was quote unquote helping me because he thought he knew the situation better than I. And he was not at all involved in the situation. But because he thought he knew better, he tried to take over. And I quickly put him back in his place and handled the situation correctly.
Yeah,
So.
exactly. So this keeps happening. So, thank you. Thank you, Laurel. And coming to the gender pay gap, on average, women in the US earn about 82 cents for every dollar earned by men. For women of color, the gap is even wider. The gender pay gap persists across nearly every industry and occupation. The World Economic Forum estimates that it will take 135.6 years to close the global gender gap if current trends continue. It's not just about direct wages. This gap extends to bonuses, promotions, and long term career advancement. So, for example, women are often funneled into lower paying roles for industries considered female dominated, like caregiving or administrative work, while men are more likely to be promoted into higher paying leadership roles. So, for example, in Iceland, often regarded as a leader in gender equality, the government took proactive steps in 2018, becoming the first country to make it illegal for companies not to prove that they pay men and women equally for the same work. This landmark legislation has led to more companies auditing their payrolls and addressing inequalities in the transparent way. So, and I do also have one more quick question. If you guys would like to answer, like, why do you think the gender pay gap, has been so difficult to close? What are some like deeper societal reasons?
Okay, thank you for your question. I really do think that to some extent it's challenging to close and it varies from sector to sector. I worked for healthcare and permit me to say I was a bad example. I had female nurses, and it was a specialized center, it's a cardiovascular center, and coincidentally, all the nurses on duty they had menstrual cramps. And for once, I felt, why did I even think of hiring? Why did I have just females? And
Yeah.
from that moment, I insisted on hiring male nurses. Even though that was supposed to be a strategic way to manage a business, I think I didn't handle it excellently well because I should have then said it should be a 50-50 range for both male and female nurses. But I think I was just acting with the moments. I felt disappointed that our patients didn't have the quality care I expected they should have because the nurses were not at their best time. And I think these are some of the challenges that affect pay gaps because we see that women of childbearing ages were scared of hiring them as HRs because we feel if they start going on maternity leave, it's going to leave a gap in the work. So for places like manufacturing or for special services, we have challenges around that line. And sincerely, it's a conversation that should really be treated because even though we want to be balanced, sometimes we also want to manage our businesses. And these are some of the things we consider. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. Uh, so yeah, as you said, companies can start by conducting pay audits to identify disparities, and they should implement transparent salary bands, develop mentorship and sponsorship programs for women, and ensure the advancement opportunities aren't hindered by unconscious bias or caregiving responsibilities. So, next slide, please. So, yeah, gender representation in leadership. When we think of leadership positions, CEOs, board members, political leaders, our mental images are often dominated by men. In fact, women hold 28% of senior management positions globally, and the numbers are even lower in industries like technology and finance. This underrepresentation isn't just a gender issue, it also limits organizational innovation as diverse leadership teams are proven to drive better decision making and problem solving. So, in 2020, recently, Jen Fraser became the first woman to head a major US bank, Citigroup. While this was a significant milestone, women still only represent less than 10% of CEO positions in Fortune 500 companies. Her promotion is a reminder of both how far we've come and how far we still have to go. So I do have one more quick question. What factors do you think contribute to the lack of women in leadership roles?
I want to say, following what the previous participant just said, Davida, I think not just the disparities in the paper. We're talking about childbearing ages and women, being fearful of going to work. And then if they have to start a family, they have to leave. But the support in the organizations, the lack of universal health care or child care and support for women to do that so that way they don't have to pick. Oftentimes, women are left having to choose between whether they want to start a family or being able to pursue their career, their dreams. And when, depending on especially where you are, certain places don't have those types of policies or protections in place for that, the work-life balance, it can be extremely challenging and can be very discouraging, especially for women of color, to try to get into those positions and have that long-term stability for themselves or what they would want for their families.
Yeah. Thank you, Ayana.
Please, if I could add,
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
say
Please
I
go.
would speak for, and in an area like Nigeria and then sub-Saharan Africa, one of the challenge is the culture. So it's imbibing every young woman to understand that nothing comes before her family and her children. Raising children and family is prioritized than any other form of leadership. And even if this leadership has to do with being a leader within your schoolmates, it somehow looks the culture connotes such a woman to be arrogant, ungodly, wicked, and unfriendly. So if you have women in Nigeria who are striving for leadership position, first of all, they are seen as being ruthless, unkind, and unnice. But we're glad to say that we're having that change. The current president of the WTO is a Nigerian woman, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, and we're really proud of her. But culture have really affected this narrative here. Thank you.
Uh, thank you. So,
I also wanted to, sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
No, you can go ahead. It's fine.
No, I just wanted to add about gender stereotypes, like how society often associate leadership, qualities with men. So this is
Yeah.
also it's also leading to the bias against women in leadership roles, and yeah, also again there are other factors as well about the culture and all those things. But yeah, I think those stereotypes also is a
Yeah,
leading cause.
we
Yeah.
we gonna like discuss about stereotypes in the next slide.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you though. And we know the barriers include like unconscious bias, a lack of visible female role models, and work life balance challenges. So the solutions include like leadership training programs focused on women, flexible work arrangements, and transport promotion criteria. Companies can also adapt policies to ensure that women are represented on hiring panels and shortlist diverse candidates for leadership roles. Yeah. So, gender stereotypes in education and careers. Think back to your school days where boys and girls encouraged to pursue different subjects. Chances are boys were stressed towards science and technology, while girls were encouraged to focus on the arts or caregiving roles. These stereotypes start early and can limit career choices. Today, women represent only 28% of the system workforce in the US, even though studies show they perform just as well as men academically. These biases don't just affect individual career paths but also the broader economy. Research by the OECD suggests that increasing female participation in the STEM could boost global GDP by 12% over the next 2 decades. So, in 2014, the UK launched the Your Life campaign aimed to encouraging young girls to study STEM subjects by showcasing female role models in engineering and tech. They saw a measurable increase in girls pursuing these fields. And I do have one more quick question, like how have gender stereotypes influenced your own educational or career choices?
I studied industrial physics in first in BSc level. That's I don't know how it's called. So after high school, college, yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember in my third year in school, because we do engineering drawing, we do some courses with engineers, and I had a coursemate who tells me, one of the worst thing I've ever done to myself is studying a male course, and that physics and all that have to do with industrial physics is actually a male story and has nothing to do with a woman. I know I've heard those things before I got my admission, but
Yeah.
I don't know how it worked that day because I regretted it terribly. And as I speak to you now, I'm not practicing anything related to physics. And sometimes I feel excited because I feel I'm no longer doing the course that is actually for men. Um, I don't know what to say about this, but to a
Yeah.
large extent, society made me feel I did something wrong. Yeah, I enjoy being a HR now, but that was how I walked away from being an industrial physicist. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Davida. Thank you. So, like, schools can like encourage girls by providing equal access to STEM programs, like showcasing female scientists and engineers, and offering mentorship opportunities. Companies can launch initiatives like that encourage women to pursue careers in traditionally male dominated fields and provide scholarships, internships, and development programs tailored to women in STEM. Yeah. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Hi everyone. I have to run. I really don't want to, but I have to, because I have to take care of my children. And I am on the opposite end of the spectrum. Yes, I'm a white male, so I don't fit a lot of the typical stereotypes and all those other things. But I am a solo father of my three children because my kids were abused by their mother and her ex-boyfriend. So I meet gender stereotypes all the time. And I also help people heal from trauma. So if you take every one of these topics that you're talking about and you go a layer deeper, it really is imposed societal, cultural, and generational belief structures that has really torn us down to our core and created these unconscious biases. So the only way to really shift humanity or shift what you're looking at, all these different areas, is to focus on making people more self-aware of their biases and more aware of themselves. And they can't do that until they do extensive work to understand their subconscious mind. And unfortunately, the world that we exist in today doesn't support that. But I love the direction that you're going with this, and there's lots of practical ideas. But until people are willing to work on themselves, none of them can be put in place. I appreciate you all. Thank you so much for doing this, and I will try to watch the rest of the recording later. But I have to go take my kid, get my kids out of
Yeah.
therapy.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Yeah. Going to the next slide. Yeah. Impacts of gender equality on mental health. So, gender inequality doesn't just impact wages or career opportunities, it has profound effects on mental health. Women, especially those in male dominated fields, are more likely to experience workplace harassment, microaggressions, and chronic stress. They often bear the emotional burden of balancing work, family, and societal expectations. This imbalance has serious consequences. Studies show that women are more likely than men to suffer from anxiety, depression, and burnout. In a 2021 survey, over 42% of women were reported feeling chronically stressed, compared to 32% of men due to workplace pressure and family responsibilities. In tech companies like Google, employees have openly discussed burnout with female employees, particularly affected due to the pressure of working in a male dominated industry. Following internal pressure, Google introduced initiatives like better access to mental health services, flexible working hours, and more robust support for women balancing work and family life. I do have a quick question. Like this will be the last. How do you think gender roles contribute to stress and mental health challenges, especially for a woman?
I can quickly answer this.
Yeah.
I think for women employees, I think one way I think they can suffer from mental health issues because they're under the stress of maybe trying to break away from the stereotype and actually trying to so from because they're trying to break through the stereotype, they might suffer from more stress of trying to do what isn't normal, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And like what I do feel like companies can do better to support mental health and well-being is like they need to prioritize mental health resources like counseling, support groups, and mental health days, promoting work-life balance through flexible working arrangements, ensuring equal access. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to just point that some companies have been trying to improve, reduce the stress or work-life balance for women in Nigeria. Permit me to talk about Nigeria because I understand this society. So
Yeah.
we have some organizations here that have crèche within the workspace. So mothers can come with their nursing mothers can come with to work with their children. So they have a crèche, they pay for, or they come with someone who attends to the children, and then they go there to do the breastfeeding for the child and while they do their work. So it's like having a crèche within the workspace and delivering to your job and still attending to your children. That has really reduced the stress or the challenge of burnout for nursing women, especially within the Nigerian space. This is not done for several companies, but I know some companies that have been doing this in recent times.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And yeah, so yeah, please go ahead.
I think providing a proper resource and time management, and for especially for women's and corporate culture, we can provide a proper like remote work for their, because they have to balance their home life and office life. Like what could I say? They have to
Yeah,
balance
got it.
both of
Yeah.
their lives. So we have to provide some remote spaces for them. Like we should provide proper resources for their personal cares and everything. So it will be more supportive than arranging some mental or like psychiatrical some sessions or something. This will be more helpful for them.
Yeah. And yeah, culture.
Sure. So I'll be doing the culture section. Sorry, let me just turn on my camera quickly.
Um, Please,
Um,
just before you take the culture, I just have a slight challenge with the gender because it looks like the focus on gender is just on the female gender. But I beg to differ that sometimes there are also some stereotypes with the male gender that may need to be considered.
Yeah, like yeah, we do have some male stereotypes as well.
For example, what I'm saying is here, some males are ashamed of identifying as nurses. The society here believes that if you meet a man in a hospital, the man should be a doctor and the woman should be a nurse. Some persons are yet to understand that neither doctor or nurse, neither medicine or nursing is gender-based course to study. So I'm just saying that even as we care for the women who are being marginalized, we should also consider the males as well who are going through some challenges because of their gender and as it relates to their career path.
Yeah, David. Yeah, I do agree. Yeah,
Davida,
that
but
that's
we
like
were just mainly focusing on the general
yeah,
agenda, like which is most dominating.
yeah. So even like that is there, but like yeah, we do agree with you. And thank you so much. Yeah, Feshang, you can take over.
sure. So I'll be doing the culture section. Specifically, so identity. Imagine starting a new job in a foreign country where you don't speak the language fluently and the workplace norms are different from what you're used to. How would that
Dora,
impact
could
your
you turn
performance?
your camera on, please?
Uh, wait, is it not on?
It's
We
on.
can see you.
Yeah, I think I turned it on.
Okay. Well, apparently something is wrong with it, but go ahead.
Okay, so for many immigrants and people from minority cultures, cultural barriers can make it difficult to integrate into the workplace, limiting their opportunities for growth and promotion, even in multinational companies. employees from diverse backgrounds may feel excluded because of subtle cultural norms, such as like communication styles, dress codes, or social interactions that they're unfamiliar with. This can lead to feelings of isolation, even affect job performance. A real-world example is Unilever, a global company that recognizes the challenge and implemented a diversity and inclusion program that encourages employees to share the cultural practices openly. This initiative has helped break down cultural barriers and foster better team collaborations across its global offices. Now, I ask you guys, have you ever experienced cultural barriers at work? How did it affect your relationships with your colleagues or your ability to do your job? Again, anybody can answer this.
I can go ahead. So I think not the cultural, but you can say religious aspect. So I wear a headscarf. So sometimes people, act like like I don't know, or I don't have like enough knowledge about the subject, and sometimes they treat it like that way. But then I have to like show more effort and put more effort into it and show like, okay, I'm capable of it and I know that. So yeah, sometimes, yeah, I face those issues.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Samya. I think everybody when they enter a new workplace that they're unfamiliar with, I think they will have to put extra effort. Organizations can support employees that offer language and cultural orientation programs, ensuring managers are trained to recognize and mitigate cultural biases and promoting inclusive leadership. Encouraging cross-cultural team building exercises and celebrating international holidays can also help employees feel more connected. Now, moving on to the workplace bit. Again, as I said, it's hard to adjust to new workplaces that obviously you're unfamiliar with, and one of the largest examples would be Unilever that is actively implementing solutions. Moving on to education. Imagine being a student in a classroom where your culture is not represented in the curriculum, or worse, where your cultural background is even seen as a disadvantage. This is the reality for many students of color or from minority ethnic groups. The education system often unconsciously tends to favor the dominant culture, which can limit students' ability to succeed. Studies have shown that students perform better academically when they see themselves reflected in the curriculum. Cultural biases in education can lead to lower self-esteem and disengagement, particularly for students who feel their background isn't valued or validated. A world example of this is in Canada. The implementation of Indigenous-focused education programs has helped bridge the achievement gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous students. By including Indigenous history, culture, and perspectives in the curriculum, students have shown increased engagement and academic performance. Schools can clarify their curriculum to include contributions from various cultures and ensure that teaching staff come from diverse backgrounds. Implementing culturally responsive teaching practices and fostering an environment where all cultures are respected and celebrated can greatly improve student engagement and success. And moving on to healthcare. Now, again, imagine going to the doctor with a serious health concern, but because of cultural differences, your symptoms are dismissed or misunderstood. This happens far too often, particularly to minority and immigrant communities. Cultural barriers and implicit biases in healthcare can lead to misdiagnosis, poorer treatment outcomes, and overall lower trust in medical professionals. The lack of cultural competency in healthcare can lead to dire consequences. For example, studies show that Black women in the US are significantly more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications than white women. This is partly due to implicit bias that lead healthcare providers to underestimate or dismiss their symptoms. A real-world example again is the Cleveland Clinic implementing a cultural competency training program that helps healthcare providers better understand and address the unique needs of their diverse patient population. The program includes language services, education about cultural differences and healthcare expectations, and improving communication with non-English speaking patients. Now again, I'll ask you guys, have you or someone you know ever experienced cultural barriers when seeking medical care? How did it impact your trust in the healthcare system?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, we can.
Hi, my name is Margaret Martinez. Oh, you can see me. Okay. Oops. Oh, okay. Can you hear me okay still?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I was having
can.
problems with my laptop. But okay, so here's the thing. As a as an interpreter, I have been in the medical field when I was in there. I have helped a lot of people with the language barrier. It, you know, with that trust, they felt more comfortable with me than they would with somebody who was struggling with an iPad. Luckily now technology has made it a way for it to be a little bit easier, but still, that still is the trust factor as well there. So that's how I've experienced it on the other side. And then how they tell me, you know, the patients, how grateful and gratitude that when they speak and they're able to have someone who is able to help. But without that, they're so lost. And it just becomes more of an issue. And then now you have anxiety and you have all of these other things that you've added on to what the reason is that you're there for in the first place. So that's what I had to add. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Margaret, for that. I think definitely it's a human tendency to obviously gravitate towards what they know or what they are knowledgeable about. And in this case, obviously, language is a part where obviously people will feel more comfortable talking in their native language or at least a language that they know. And so sometimes even with Google Translate and a lot of technology that have that support, you know, translating languages, it's still, you know, I guess foreign to other people and may make people uncomfortable even with translating the language. So yeah. Now, let's think about our neighborhoods and communities. How can we make them more inclusive for people from or from all cultures? Cultural awareness isn't just about tolerance. It's about creating a space where everyone feels valued and understood, regardless of their background. This is particularly important in multicultural cities where people from all over the world live and work together. Communities that actively promote cultural awareness through education, events, and policies tend to be more cohesive and resilient. By fostering open dialogue and celebrating different traditions, we can break down stereotypes and create a more harmonious environment for everyone. Or another real-world example for this is in Toronto, one of the world's most multicultural cities. The government actively supports community initiatives that celebrate cultural diversity. Events like the Carabana, a Caribbean festival, and Diwali celebrations have not only helped preserve cultural traditions, but also have brought people from different backgrounds together, creating a sense of shared community. Individuals can contribute by actively participating in cultural exchange activities, advocating for policies that support cultural diversity, and educating themselves about the different cultures represented in their community. Small actions like attending cultural festivals, supporting minority owned businesses, and learning about other cultures can make a significant difference in promoting inclusion. Sure, so I'll hand it off now.
Yeah, I'll take it over. Thank you, Fashion. So, yeah, let's start by defining sexual orientation. So it's like more than just you're attracted to. It's a core part of who you are. So now imagine like growing up in a society where you constantly feel the need to hide that part of yourself. This is the reality for many LGBTQ people around the world. So sexual orientation is one of the most personal aspect of identity, and yet it's often the subject of prejudice and discrimination. In many countries, people still face legal challenges, social stigma, and violence simply for being themselves. Even in more progressive places, the fear of being judged or rejected by peers, family, or the employees can force the people to hide their true identities. So, for example, in United States, until Supreme Court's 2020 ruling, there were no clear federal protections against the workplace discrimination for LGBTQ individuals. Now, while the legal framework is changing, workplace culture still lags behind, making it difficult for LGBTQ employees to feel fully accepted. Next slide, Krisha. Yeah. So just imagine working at a job where you're constantly worried about people finding out about your sexual orientation. You might hide your personal details, avoid social interactions, or feel excluded from the team activities. This kind of environment is common for many LGBTQ individuals and even today. So despite these legal protections in some countries, many LGBTQ employees still face subtle and discrimination in their workplace, whether it's being passed over for promotions, like facing hostile work environments, or being excluded from social events. These experiences can make it difficult for LGBTQ people to feel comfortable or perform their best. In 2020 global study by McKinsey and Company found that 40% of the LGBTQ employees in the US are not fully out at work due to the fear of discrimination. Even when the companies have inclusive policies, cultural bias, or fear of backlash from colleagues often keeps them silent. Next slide. Yeah, thank you. So let's consider two employees. One is openly LGBTQ and feels supported by their colleagues, while the other is closeted and constantly worrying about being found out. Which one do you think performs better? Studies shows that employees who are out at work tends to be more engaged, productive, and loyal to their organization. However, the decisions to come out at work is deeply personal, and for many, the fear of being judged or facing discrimination is too great. Even in the environment that are legally supportive, cultural biases and microaggressions can still make it difficult for LGBTQ employees to feel comfortable being open, being open about their identities. So, for example, Apple CEO Tim Cook, who came out as a gay in 2014, has become a powerful advocate for LGBTQ plus rights. His openness has not only inspired other LGBTQ individuals but also highlighted other importance of visibility in leadership. Apple has consistently ranked among the most LGBTQ friendly workplaces, showing positive impact of inclusive leadership. So I just want to ask you guys, like as a colleagues, how can we create an environment where everyone feels comfortable being themselves? Anyone can answer. Like, what do you guys think?
From my own personal experiences, I think really building on inclusive language, always leaving in room for addressing pronouns, addressing preferred names, usually just having people by their names, so it's not always having to feel the pressure, because especially when we're coming people, these conversations can be delicate, they can be very sensitive for people, and for people who aren't as knowledgeable about LGBTQ plus, and where those where those terminologies may come from, or how to use them, or how they play out in spaces. Just keeping it very simple, so it's down to the respect of just making sure you address people by how they prefer to be, how they would prefer to be addressed, and not just making an assumption. That has been very helpful for me, and it's been a pivotal step for me in terms of working with LGBTQ plus groups, because even that can go a very long way, open a conversation and leave them feeling welcome, that it wasn't just I made the assumption or somebody else didn't ask, but really creating that space for them, like you all talked about.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Thank you so much. Uh, Feshangle, can we go to the next slide? So yeah, just imagine turning on the TV or scrolling through social medias and never seeing someone who looks like you or shares your experience. This has been the reality for LGBTQ individuals for decades. Representation matters, not just for validation, but because it shapes the society norms and perceptions. Media representation of LGBTQ individuals has improved in recent years, but it still has a long way to go. Positive and diverse portrayals help break down stereotypes and encourage acceptance. Unfortunately, negative portrayals or the erasure of LGBTQ experience can reinforce harmful prejudice and create a hostile environment for people. Uh, Shows like Pose on FX, which features like predominantly transgender cast of color, have been a groundbreaking in bringing the LGBTQ stories to the mainstream audience. It has helped challenge stereotypes and shed light on the struggles and resilience of LGBTQ plus individuals, particularly in marginalized communities. Next slide. So yeah, now let's think about our communities. How inclusive are they for LGBTQ people? Do people feel safe holding hands with their partner in public, or are they worried about judgment or harassment? Building an inclusive community requires more than just legal rights. It's about creating a culture where everyone, regardless of sexual orientation, feels safe and welcomed. LGBTQ people often face discrimination not just at work, but in everyday life, whether it's in housing, healthcare, or social service. Community support is essential in making sure that everyone feels safe, respected, and valued for who they are. This starts with awareness, but it also requires active involvement from allies and community leaders. In San Francisco, known for its strong LGBTQ community, the city has implemented numerous programs to support LGBTQ individuals, from health services tailored to LGBTQ plus needs to pride events that celebrate diversity. This has made San Francisco one of the most inclusive city in the world, serving as a model for others. So, as individuals, what are the actions that we can take to be better allies with LGBTQ plus people in our communities? So what do you think? Like, what are the actions that we can take? Or Dr. Kumar?
First, I think it will require leadership. Like every aspect of these issues you've all discussed so eloquently. Without leadership commitment to these issues and working to root them out, most of the things we say or do wouldn't make much sense. So when a leader emerges and indicates that these are things they are going to tolerate and these are things they're not going to tolerate, and have a policy to back it up with due punishment for violation as well as reward for going extra mile to do this. And in that type of cultural environment, I will believe that it could also come to personals where people will say, everyone has to be responsible for holding ourselves responsible for any of the misbehavior that oftentimes go either overtly or covertly. Like some people may go to a hidden place and be gossiping, talking rubbish, and then others would feel like they can't because of fear. You want to cultivate a culture where people would openly challenge themselves, hold themselves accountable. And when you have environment where this is done, you see it working. I recall when I was at Illinois State University, I was called sometime at 1 o'clock in the morning, where one of my graduate students was tackled and left to die, was bleeding. It was horrible. When I got there, I had to call 911 to take that person out. Now, the person that called me happened to be somebody who was in the same class with that guy. If you were not there, that guy could have probably died. So I would say that we have to ensure that everyone knows that whether they're individuals or group, that they're all responsible for maintaining equity and social justice in whatever the community may be. Thank you.
Very well said, sir. Thank you so much. So yeah, that's it for the presentation, and thank you so much, everyone, for providing an opportunity for us interns for doing this. And yeah, we went a little ahead of the time, but yeah, thank you so much.
Well, I want to tell you guys that I appreciate it. I would say if you could exercise a short period, if we could get some questions from the people who are here. So I would say if you have any question for them, could you please ask them the question just to make sure we fulfill all parts of our project. Any question? I see some. Anna, is it? Anna, do you have questions? Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So I specifically do not have any questions, but I just wanted to share my comments on this session that we had today. So it was my first time attending the session of SDIG, and I'm really happy to be here because I really gained way too much knowledge, and basically it was all about the things that happen around us, but still we don't give them much consideration. But these things are important in such a way that these things in fact make the world a better place. And if guys like you don't do sessions like these, the world would not be the place to live anymore. So a great applause to you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Anas. That means a lot.
Yeah. All right. Any more question? Is this side? Margaret, do you have question?
Yeah, hello. I don't have any questions, doctor, but I want to really appreciate everyone who just put their effort and just presented a beautiful uh, on this topic, beautifully described the topic, and it was really knowledgeable. So being a part of this entire meeting, and it was really grateful and good work, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Out of
Yes,
curiosity.
Sorry.
No, you can go ahead.
Okay.
Okay.
Margaret.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I keep interrupting. I think we're all thinking on the same page, so that's a good thing. It's a good thing. Hello. Yes. So I wanted to know, what is your end game with collectively, how you've come up with everything and you put all of your program together and everything. So what is the end game? What is the ultimate result and achievement that and success that you see with what you've done and how you've and to apply it? Thank you.
Well, I can chip in. I didn't hear anyone, so I want to say this. These are our heroes. These are people representing institutions of higher learning. A number of them are coming from our partners, University of Chicago, as well as Drexel University. And their end game is not only to broaden the scope and ensure that discussion goes far, because our global communities are in trouble. And unfortunately, we don't have quality leaders. So what they are advocating for is a fair world, a world where equity and social justice carries the day, where one could feel comfortable not only in whom he or she may be, but also in whom other people could be. And of course, they're going to be like evangelicals for the issue of equity and social justice. And I'm sure that upon getting back to their institutions, they will be changing minds. There are some people who, for lack of better words, their behavior or racist behavior, discriminatory practices towards any of the groups they mentioned stem from how they had been social cultured in their private communities, in the companies they keep, their friends. They could say certain things in private, but when it comes to public, they hide it. And in that way, the problem because that they don't even recognize the existence of the problem, and hence they can't recognize the existence of the problem. They cannot solve it. So these guys are doing a wonderful job, and I believe that when they go to their professions, they're all doing great programs. I'm sure down the road, these are going to be great people. And of course, they are humbling us, letting us know that there are people who are committed to the issues which SDIG tried to say we are all in our quest for peace, equity, and social justice for all. Thank you. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you, sir. The end game of our presentation is to spark awareness, inspire action, and also, foster meaningful change by guiding the audience through provoking real-world issues related to race, gender, sexual orientation, and culture. The main goal is to, recognize inequality or help them and identify understanding what systematic inequalities and their impacts on various communities. So also to take action to equip them with practical steps they can take, whether in an workplace or community or their personal lives, to also address the inequality and promote inclusivity. Ultimately, it is to motivate the audience to become active agents of change and committed to creating more equitable and inclusive world for all.
Yeah, thank you.
I was going to ask earlier, not all of you have to answer, but I guess a couple of you, if you'd like to, for the presenters, what of the attributes most resonates with you in terms of your own identity development and cultivation as you've matriculated through these experiences? So DEI, was it your race that was most prominent, your gender, your class, your orientation? And what did that look like? And did any of that stick out to you while you were putting together your sections of the presentation?
If I can, sorry, I can answer that. I think while putting in my part of the section, specifically with culture, I'm a person who was born in South Africa, but my parents are Chinese and they were born in China. So definitely it was putting in that sort of like experience, putting in that slideshow together, specifically in the culture part. It was sort of it resonated quite a bit with my experiences because obviously coming from a very culturally diverse background, I think, you know, it really opened your eyes how like very different people can come from very different cultural backgrounds. They can have different viewpoints, and sometimes we need to have the sympathy and empathy to try and relate to them, even with like different cultural backgrounds. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I wanna send a special thank you to you guys for the way you've worked on this. You certainly gave us something to be thinking about and adding to our mission for expanding and seeing that we do whatever we can to make our world a better place. So I appreciate each and every one of you. I still like somebody is raising his or her hand. Okay. So I appreciate all of you, and for those that
It was for a
came,
question.
I'm sorry.
It
Okay.
was for a It was for a question.
Okay.
I wanted to ask a question. That was when you
Oh,
were
okay.
saying if
Go
you had
ahead, please.
question.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So I wanted to know how it could possibly, if how do people possibly manage being diverse and then upholding mutual respect. As with the case of LGBT, for instance, I do know that whilst not everyone is fighting against the LGBT community, how do we draw the lines around people who do not want their children to be exposed to some of the LGBT activities without their consent, especially in schools and other social places? Is there a line? Is there a place where we marry both ideologies, the ideology of being inclusive and the ideology of also respecting people's will regarding their lives, their children, their spaces?
That's a nice question. Managing diversity while holding mutual respect for LGBTQ individuals, especially involves fostering an environment of inclusion, awareness, and allyship. There are some few strategies to promote the mutual respect, educating and awareness. First thing is to understand the issues what they are facing, and encouraging them continuous learning about identities what they face or struggles and rights, which helps break down to stereotypes and misconceptions. Organizations can provide resources and training sessions to and open discussions to educate the people. Whereas some companies recently Google and IBM, they offer mandatory diversity and inclusion training. And also there are inclusive policies and practices for creating equal opportunities in healthcare or education sector. And also by by institutionalizing these policies, people are held accountable for maintaining a respectful and fair environment. Creating a open and safe communication, maybe it also helps in promoting all these things. And celebrating diversity, which achievements and recognizing their contributions in the workplace or media or for community, which gives them a lot of environment of respect. Pride events and history months, so representation in leadership roles highlight the importance of inclusivity.
Yeah, I completely agree with Rohit. Yeah, I know it's a very difficult process, but what I say is just taking one step at a time is a good thing because talking about organizational changes is a big thing. But what I say it's getting changes in individuals is much more easier, like taking one step at a time and understanding others. So that's what I like to say.
If I may add to this, thank you so much for your comments. I really like the way you guys are approaching this. What I would like to say is that this is why it's so important for us to engage with one another. Because by engagement, we'll be exploring possibilities, how it impacts everyone, various perspectives, and perhaps coming to some sort of agreement as to the parents who may say, well, I don't want my kid to be exposed because of specifics. This, those people do. And then that message is brought into the discussion, then we will all come to discuss it and come to something that can be acceptable. It's not different from other binaries like you hear about liberals and the conservatives. You hear about Democrats and and Republicans. You hear about what do I call it? All these binaries. The problems of the world, most of them stem from inability of people to articulate their position in a careful way that other people can see it. If you express your frustration or your pain for what somebody does, I can guarantee you that if it's in an environment where people pay attention and listen to what one says, you will be able to come up with a solution. So these binaries we see across the board globally, that sometimes there's something I was looking at, I say that we are in problem, in really trouble globally, where we see things that are wrong, we say nothing. We see things that are right, we kind of cover it as if we don't know what is, we can't distinguish right and wrong, but I bet you we can. That's why I keep saying, evoking John Kennedy's profile in courage. We don't have courageous people. And the only way to solve the issue is open engagement. That's what advocates for multicultural education are talking about. If you engage in openly, you'll be able to sift into all these problems. And people who are in leadership, some of them will purport that they have this degree, have that degree. But sometimes I wonder, what kind of degrees are these? People who have a BA will be able to think of those things carefully. So when I see people with master's degree, with PhD degrees, but they can't decipher what specific can be done to deal with some of these issues, it bothers me. So I'm very, very pleased with the good questions and responses we've gotten thus far. You guys are my heroes. I'm so, so, so proud of you guys. Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for this presentation, Dr. Joseph, and everyone here. Great job to battle the mindset, right? Because what you're tackling on is a learned behavior, something that has been instilled and passed on over and over and over again. So this is the mindset. So once someone has a fixed mindset, now you have to tackle on and keeping in mind that you're going to have a growth mindset, right? And that is a huge challenge. Right now, I just came off of an event for trying to make it changes in Africa, right? So I just want to applaud everybody. That's amazing because you're taking like Dr. Joseph said, the global issues, the realistic issues, right, of learned behavior. So, yay, I'm so happy. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. You're so kind. They've done wonderfully well. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So, guys, I don't know how to thank you guys, but I'm so proud of you guys, and I hope that you take it and continue to push until you get the world we deserve.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving this opportunity.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely.